This is the Living Max Health Podcast. We are so happy to have you here, where we're talking about the principles, the practice, the mindset, and the strategies for living healthy and aging better. I have a very special guest today with me here, Mr. Ken Newbill from Newbill of Health. He's going to tell us his story and talk a little bit about what it takes for you to actually achieve your goals in the real world, in this world, in the 21st century, right now, what it is that you need to do. And so we're going to be looking at those strategies and definitely engage in this conversation, because all of these pieces that I'm putting in place here are things that you're going to need in order to be able to achieve your goals. So we're so happy to have Ken here. Welcome.
Oh, it's good to be here, Brad. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your story, how you came to be, and get us started here with our understanding.
Yeah, you bet. I'd be happy to. You know, my story started about 8 years ago. I was working, just coming out of actually having a former business when I was in the finance industry. And so I was shutting that business down. That industry had got me quite unhealthy. I was not feeling my best. I gained a lot of weight. I was actually
because you weren't active.
I was hitting the desk. You know, it was desk hours, working late hours, trying to build this business.
Right.
Very stressful environment. The market was doing whatever it was doing financially at the time, which wasn't the greatest. And so I was dealing with a lot of stressors that I was kind of new to. I just wasn't used to dealing with those types of stressors, and I wasn't used to being behind a desk and living in a desk environment for so many years. Prior to me being in that business for 7 to 8 years, I came out of the military, where I was able to kind of keep my health together by movement. I was just very active.
What branch of the military?
I was in the Army.
In the Army,
yes.
Okay. For how many years were you
I
in?
did 12 years.
12 years in the Army. Congratulations.
Oh, well, thank you.
Thank you for your service.
You're welcome. Glad you made it out safely and in one piece.
So you get out of the Army, you've been super active, and now
Yeah.
you're in this financial corporate environment, and start putting on the LBs.
Yeah, and you know what was interesting was I was putting on weight. However, I was still doing the best I could do with getting to the gym, eating appropriately, whatever that was at the time, that had been working for me. However, it wasn't serving me any longer, and that became apparent the day that we found out, my wife and I found out that we were pregnant with our first child. We had actually blown past the first trimester. We were now in the second trimester when we got notice, hey, you're pregnant. And we're like, oh, we are. Awesome.
Life's about to change here.
Life's about to change right now. And that night, I had a minor heart attack. I was up doing what I was normally doing at that time, which was stress eating. It was a good day to stress eat, by the way, just finding out, you know, our whole life was going to change in a matter of about 6 months.
So you're how old at this time?
38.
At 38,
yes.
You had a heart attack?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
So I had a heart attack that night by myself while my wife was asleep in the room, and it was minor because I'm still here. But I got up from that incident and realized, you know, I got a problem. Called my doctor, talked to my doctor about it. He was very frank with me. You know, you need to get your life together. You need to make a change. I was over 270 plus pounds at the time.
Wow.
And there was the proof in the pudding that I was not living the life I needed to be living. So,
did you have any warning sign at all? Anything that showed up that maybe led you to believe that you had a cardiovascular problem at all?
You know, when I think back on it, I do remember having some tightness of chest over a period of time that I kind of just shoved off. You know, like, it got a little tight. Or from time to time, I'd have a bit of heart palpitation that was a little irregular, right? And I'm like, you know, you just kind of knock it off, no big deal. And you keep going about your day because, well, you're kind of not
because that's
being
what
realistic.
People do. They ignore their body. They're not paying attention to the signs and signals and things that their body's telling them.
Absolutely.
And they're not looking in the mirror. They're not looking in the mirror and going, "What's happening to me here? I'm eating and I'm growing and."
Yeah, I had all those problems, and then there's also just the bit of it can't happen to me kind of thing, right? I think most of us think we're pretty bulletproof, and this body of ours does a great job at dealing with whatever we throw at it for a long time.
Yes.
You know, so there I was. I dealt with it. I got up from the floor, used the bathroom, came back, sat on the couch, did some prayer.
Had had a come to Jesus moment for
I had
you
some
there.
prayer. I went into some prayer, and at that point, the very next day, I started making change.
Beautiful.
Now, I think the interesting thing was I didn't really know how to change. So, the next day I started coming up with a plan. I definitely wanted to put some things on paper, which I think is really important.
So paint the picture one more time. So you're sitting there, you're 100 pounds overweight. Tell me a little bit about what was going on in your lifestyle at that particular time.
Oh, I was eating 5 to 6 times a day.
Okay.
Something that I thought was healthy. I've been doing that for many years.
Like what? What were you eating?
I was eating a lot of processed foods at the time because I didn't have time to prepare food. So I would buy frozen meals, which I thought were going to be my kind of way out of doing something decent. And trust me, I was getting like very little grains, lots of vegetables in it, maybe like a little chicken or whatever.
Right.
So I'd buy these meals 20 at a time. I could take these 2 or 3 of those to work. It had some protein shakes I was taking. Mind you, I'm still getting bigger, right? Nothing's like helping.
Right.
And I've been doing that systematically for quite a long period of time. I was taking supplements from Vitamin Shop. Didn't feel like those were a problem. I was having protein bars. All that stuff was kind of part of my life. I had adopted that lifestyle while I was in the military. It was something that kind of helped me out when I was on travel quite a lot. I was deployed a lot in the military, probably average of 200 plus days a year.
Right. And I think a lot of people do that. They go to the store and they're shopping the aisles and they think they're making good decisions, or they're like, I'm eating healthy.
Right.
Right. I had a bowl of pasta last night, and I'm whatever the case is. So not to rag on people who are eating pasta, but understanding that certain foods are going to take you where you want to go, and certain foods are not.
That's right. That is the absolute truth. So I drank. I was definitely drinking alcohol at the time. What most would consider normal, right? Wine, glass of wine here, there, maybe a little bit over the weekends, and so you don't really think much about that. But I think it's the accumulative opportunities that we have with toxicity and various types of preservatives and things of that nature that are in the food that they clog your filter over time. And so the body does not perform the way you intended it to perform. That was basically a lot of my life, not to mention, my workouts just weren't as intense. I was not as committed to them.
You mean between when you were in the military and when you had gained all that weight?
Sure. But, I was going 3 times a week. I was still hitting the gym. I was still doing the cardio. It just wasn't all that effective, for me. So I was doing the same things and getting horrible results. And I also, I like to think back on my mentality at the time too. I was highly stressed emotionally, so having a lot of emotional stress around business and just the environmental factors that were going on at the time, just the state of the world. I took too much on in that sense too, which I think also has a very viable play in one's health. The mental capacity, the mental and spiritual capacity that we possess, and its disposition in correlation to the rest of what our physical nature is undergoing is very critical. It all has to be balanced. It all has to play like an orchestra. Mine was not. It was a very bad garage band at the time. It was not good at all.
There was a study that I was reading that was talking about how they took 2 groups of people and they fed them exactly the same. In one group they had them sleep 8 hours a night, and the other group they had sleep 5 hours a night. And the group that slept 8 hours a night actually lost 50% more fat than the group that slept 5 hours a night. People don't realize how critical some of these elements are to our overall well-being, and sometimes it's just literally a matter of sleeping more is actually going to help you get to your goal faster.
Oh my gosh, that's such a huge one. Sleep is so critical. I was not sleeping well in those years. I was often disturbed at night. I was, you hear a lot of people waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning. I was waking up every night at 2 o'clock in the morning, not even needing to go to the restroom, just kind of awake. So I was often disturbed sleep. I often got up a little groggy, and I'm normally the kind of guy, I'm a get up and go guy. Like, I'll get up and go. I don't lay around in bed like, let's go, attack the day, let's go have fun.
Back then, you were even a get up and go guy.
Yeah, I was still pushing myself through that.
Because you had the military
Yes.
mindset, so you're still got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
mental fortitude, physical was another thing. So I'm grabbing for the first stimulant I can get my hands on, you know, overdosing on caffeine throughout the day. I remember at one point I even tried the 5-hour energy shots, like they were getting hot at the time.
Right.
And so I was like, oh, let me try this thing. You know, it's the middle of the day, I want another boost. You know, instant migraine, which I had battled migraines since I was 11 years old. And, you know, I'm pleased to say I haven't had much problems with migraines in about 7 years once I made my lifestyle shift. Mm-hmm. So it was definitely chemically induced, right? It was definitely nutrition deficiencies that were happening in my body that brought upon the episodes of migraines, right? That are horrible.
So we got a migraine, we got a heart attack at 38, we've got, you know, I'm 100 pounds overweight. So what was the thing that began to change for you? So you had the wake-up call of the heart attack, but it's one thing to get started with something. It's another actually to keep going. I think that a lot of what happens with people is they're like, you know, January 1st comes along and they join the gym and they want to get going. They're super excited to be able to do it, and then they fizzle out. Oh yeah. So what was it for you that actually changed your mindset and your direction and allowed you to get to where you are now?
Failure changed my direction. When I think about what was the biggest catalyst was the first 90 days of me making that shift. It was a lot of failure that happened. Failure in the workouts aren't working. Failure in lack of commitment. I would give up on certain days, just like, you know, I just don't feel like doing it, right? But then finding a little bit more spark because I had a very good motivator. You know, I think everyone has to have a goal and a deadline in order to truly achieve what they're trying to get out of life, no matter what it is. And so I had a deadline, and that deadline was my son's birth. I wanted to be at a certain weight by time he arrived. I had 5 months to get it right. And so every time I stumbled and failed, I had a reason to get up. I had a reason to grab a hold of something and establish a new foothold to give it another shot. And so I had about a 90-day period when I first got going that it was a lot of stumbling, a lot of crumbling, a lot of ups and downs. At one point I was doing 2-a-day workouts, like I was back in the military, grueling workouts, like 1.5 hours. So I was spending like 3 hours working out a day. Not much was happening. I was getting faster.
You know what I see? I see people going into the gym and they're a good 100 or more pounds overweight, and they are working so hard on that treadmill, thinking that that's the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Thinking that's right.
Like this is the way. Like this is what my body should be doing. I should be punishing my body. Like literally, I think that's what most people think of when they go into this rapid goal chasing opportunity with weight management. Is the first thing I'm going to do is kick my own butt, right, in this process.
And if I work harder, it's going to get me to where I want to go.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I was beating myself to senseless. It was senseless what I was doing. I was coming out of the workouts like completely drenched, giving all the effort that I have. Literally sweat's coming out of my shoes. It's embarrassing. You know, there's also the shame part of this thing when you're not feeling your best or looking your best. You know, going to a gym in itself, you have this shaming opportunity that you're putting on yourself. Most people could care less about you, but it's internally what you're dealing with. In fact, most people are cheering you on, like
to not succeed.
No, they're cheering you on to like do it. I think most people in the I deal with clients on a regular basis who are like, I don't want to go to the gym because I feel like everybody's shaming me. But what I've learned is most people in a gym are all about getting results and seeing people win.
Right.
They want to see you do well.
Right.
No one's there to look at you. Everybody's there to work on themselves.
Right. They may not be clapping their hands and jumping up and down, but they're still in their mind. They're saying, "Good for you.
Yeah.
Way to go."
That's right.
Awesome.
And so, you know, I realized that when I saw a few people that came up to me once I started getting things dialed in right after this first 90 days, and I'll get to that were like, man, you've made a lot of change. Man, we've seen you work so hard. It's great. It's really inspiring. That's when you realize that, you know, part of your health is not just about you. There's so many of us that need motivation and need inspiration that if you take that, if you put on that rucksack of inspiration, if you will, and understand that you have, as a human, a responsibility to another human to be an example, right? Because there's so many of us failing at this thing called health. Very, very bad. But, back to that first 90 days, I was working out, doing the, cardio like crazy, hitting the weights, but not much really happened. I think I may in 90 days dropped about 15 pounds, which not too bad, but for the effort I was putting in,
sure.
And the joint pain I was dealing with, I injured my foot on the way, because I was pounding my body to death. So I was putting a lot of pressure on my cardiovascular system, a lot on my skeletal system, and
that's even after a heart attack, right?
Yes.
You know that your heart's already stressed, and now you're trying to push it harder. Again, somehow we're going to lift those weights, or we're going to move our body in such a way that it's going to make my heart stronger.
Yeah, this is going to make it better. So I was putting myself at more risk, for that time. And so I realized I wasn't really getting where I wanted to go. I've been journaling my path. At that point, I felt like I needed to kind of reflect on what I was doing, and also tracking what I was doing, because if you want results, you need to track. Right. So I did the tracking. I got an app. I didn't have an application. I was doing old school stuff on paper, at the time, and then learned about calorie counting. And I think around that time, MyFitnessPal was still in beta mode, right? I don't think it was actually an application yet. I think the app came out shortly thereafter on the phone, but you could get online. And so I had learned about it, calorie counting. I said, maybe I should count my calories. I've never done that in my life. Let me investigate that. So I started doing that. And yeah, that kind of helped a little bit, but not much. What really helped me out of MyFitnessPal was the forums, was where I was able to interact with some people that were doing things I've never heard of before. And so there was this one particular gentleman, I can't remember his name unfortunately right now, who was a very adamant person about what he would not eat. Like, I will never eat this again. I will never do that. This is garbage. And this guy was on fire, hot about, very passionate about his disposition in correlation to how he was intaking foods and how he was working out and how he had changed his life in a year. Like, it was completely different. And I tracked him for a while and just thought him kind of just eccentric. It's like, this guy's kind of nuts.
Right.
And then one day I was like, so, okay, man, what's your problem with rice? Like, really? What's the deal? and that kind of got his attention, and we became messaging friends very shortly thereafter. And then he pointed me to some materials to read. He's like, I can't really get into all of it because I'm not like a genius on this stuff, but here's a couple of books I read. And he gave me some references. And I said, oh, that's a great idea. Why don't I read up on trying to fix my body and fix myself? So what did you read? The first book, I believe it was Mark Sisson's Primal Blueprint, right? And so that book really opened me up, and I read it feverishly. Well, probably within a week, I was done with that book, and I read it again on a trip that came up shortly thereafter. Me and my wife were doing road trips, visiting family and things of that nature, and I was like, we gotta hear what I'm reading about. Like, this stuff is crazy. Like, we've never been taught to eat this way. We've never been taught about this type of science anywhere in our upbringing or in school, and we're really 180 out from this. And so my wife is a very slender woman, beautiful, gorgeous bride of mine, and she doesn't have the outward appearance of health not working out for her, right? She looks good, but on the inside, I was dealing with on the inside, because we were eating the same stuff, right? And so that just, I talk a lot about that with my clients, like, just because someone looks a certain way doesn't mean they're healthy. Our bodies are all different, and we respond to different things in different ways. And so the scariest people are thin people who can't see the problem. Right. And so they're harboring a lot of pain inside, and they never talk about it. And most people reverse shame them because, well, what are you worried about? You're thin.
I mean, people don't realize that there's something called skinny fat.
Yeah.
Right. You can be super thin and actually be obese on the inside. Absolutely. And have your arteries clogged and have diabetes and all sorts of different things.
Absolutely. So I read that book, and I'll tell you what, it really shifted my whole disposition on food. Very shortly after that book, what was the next book I read? I think it was actually Dr. Lorraine's book on paleo, right? So I wanted to compare and contrast to see where Mark Sisson was coming from with his philosophy to that doctor's philosophy, and I ended up making the shift. You know, I was very blessed. You know, living up in the Alexandria, Virginia area, that when I started to seek out whole foods, I went directly to the source. I was like, you know what? I'm going to farmers to get my food. I'm like pulling out of the grocery store thing.
Sure.
And so was very lucky to find, even in the cities, which I tell people, do not think just because you live in a large city that you can't get access to farmers, especially nowadays. I'm talking 8 years ago, I was able to get to Joel Salatin by stumbling over another farmer who couldn't serve my needs. It was like, well, maybe go check out Joel. And I'm like, well, who's this guy? And they're like, oh, you've never heard of this guy? I'm like, I don't know nothing about him. I'm like new in this whole world. They're like, here's one of his books, and the next thing you know, these guys like written like, I don't know, 8 or 10 books at the time.
Omnivore's Dilemma and all sorts of things. He's actually, Joel Salatin is actually, he has a farm called Polyface Farms, which is in Southern Virginia. And if you're not familiar with him, they did grass-fed meats and sustainable raised agriculture for 30 years now. It's been a really long time.
Yeah, and his family prior, you know, so I was, you know, luckily, you know, Joel had this distribution system that he had pickup points all around Maryland, DC, and Virginia. And so I plugged in.
I wish I would have known about him then.
Yeah, I plugged in, and it was a blessing because, you know, next thing you know, we're buying a deep freezer. We were in a high-rise condo, didn't really have a space for one, so we created space for it, like kind of maneuvered into one of our hallway closets. And now we had a place to store all our meats. And it was hilarious because we get this huge shipment of meats in from Joel, and we lay it all out. I put a big blanket down in the living room floor, lay it all out, organize it. It was a ritual, but we felt so blessed, and we could see the instant change by removing that level of toxicity from our bodies just in sourcing our meats a certain way. You know, the first time we cooked ground beef, we went, this is really different. What's different? You start off with a pound of meat and you end up with a pound of meat. You don't start off with a pound of ground beef and end up with half a pound of ground beef and a slew of stuff, liquid goo that's in there with it, right?
Right.
And so I'm like, well, that's got to be a good change. And it was a very good change for me. Long story short, between that point in time where I had only lost about 15 pounds, right? In the next 3 months, I was 70 pounds down total. So that's like 55 pounds.
In the next 3 months.
In the next 3 months, it just fell off. I didn't work it off. I didn't pound it off. I didn't beat it off. In fact, I dialed back my workouts because I couldn't sustain the 2 a day, right? I started working out smarter, so I started learning about, you know, metabolic. I started learning about hormones. I started learning about inflammation along with toxicity. You know, so sourcing foods locally from farmers, asking them the right questions to know how they raise their food, whether they were growing vegetables or they were growing meats, coming off of inflammatory foods, just drop them like a bad habit, which wasn't that hard for me, right? I'm not a big bread eater, so that wasn't a big deal for me. I was like, oh, bread. Now, tortilla chips, on the other hand, I'm from Austin, Texas. so tortilla
I think you're made of tortilla chips. There you're gonna go.
Yeah, tortilla chips and salsa, my favorite snack all day long, any day. I will eat those as much as I can. So that was a little difficult for me, but then learning how to replace that with other types of alternatives. And now there's so many to be able to avoid grains. I mean, you've got bean chips now and cassava flour chips now. There's so many options. It doesn't mean that they're actually all that great for you, but a little less inflammatory. It gives you another opportunity to fit some things into your diet.
Well, and you know, especially with things like corn, which have there's a lot of corn in this country which is genetically modified.
Yes.
And people don't understand that what you can't see actually can hurt you. And one of the conversations that I have with my patients is that, you know, there are engineers right now trying to figure out how to get more junk food into your body.
Absolutely.
And so if we're not aware of that and we're shopping the aisles and we're looking at, even if you're, let's say the first step is you start to read labels and you're going through the store and you're reading the labels. Well, sometimes what it is that you're seeing is not healthy. It sounds like it could be healthy, but if you can't pronounce it and it does not make sense, the likelihood is that's an engineered food.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes. Or partially engineered.
Partially
They've got
engineered
so
food,
many
right,
ways
right,
they want to
right.
swing it these days.
Right.
You know, so in reading labels and then understanding that if you're reading lots of labels, you're probably not eating whole food, because whole food doesn't have many labels on it at all.
Right.
One. Yeah, it's like steak. It's like potato. It's like corn. Whatever it is, right? It's not like all this extra stuff. So really sourcing your foods and be willing to do the work. That's the part that people misinterpret when they shift into a lifestyle of trying to dial things in from a nutrition standpoint. Is you're going to have to make some changes if you really want this to work for yourself. You're going to have to cook. You're going to have to get in the kitchen.
By work?
Yeah, you're going to have to do that work. You're going to have to go to a different place to shop. You're going to have to get out of routine, and that's okay. That's a good thing to do, because your needs are not being met in those places where you're currently sourcing your food-like items. Okay, and you need to get to real whole food opportunity and whole food nutrition. And that took a little bit of learning, but it became so important. I remember when we moved to the Charlotte area that before I even got here, I did a recon, right? So I was actually seeking out people on Facebook and Meetup that were already into a certain way of eating that aligned with the way that I ate at the time, and finding out what resources that they were using that were local, who were the farmers that they were working with, and why were they working with them, how long they've been working with them. It was that important to me to be able to understand that. Right? There's so many great, eatwild.com is a great website for people.
Eat Wild?
Eatwild.com will tell you, they map out the entire nation of all the farmers around you. So if you live in someplace in Wisconsin or you're in San Francisco, it doesn't matter. They'll tell you all the local resources there and what they serve and how they serve it.
What would you say to the research world, or the common, what am I trying to say here? The common kind of messaging that eating meat is bad for you, it's going to clog your heart, that you're better off with a vegetarian diet, that and again, they don't talk so much about processed foods.
Yes.
It's more about kind of they talk about cholesterol, they talk about other things. So what would you say to those people who, because I think the truth is that I think that there's confusion in the market as it relates to food.
Yes.
People don't understand foods. We hear these terms, whole foods. We hear about paleo, and I'm like, well, I don't want to eat that much meat.
Yeah.
And
yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
So I think that as an individual, if you're overweight, you're trying to lose weight, you're trying to figure out which foods are going to help you or not help you. Speak maybe a little bit about that, and maybe the clients you've worked with, and because I can't imagine everybody has done the exact same plan. They do different things.
Yes, they have to do different things because people are at different stages. First and foremost, it's all about the body's ability to get the nutrients in, actually absorb them in the first place. So when we think about nutrition, I don't actually start with, all the vitamins and minerals. How is the machine? Is the machine prepared to even receive nutrition?
Meaning the human body,
yes,
or what
that human body
is in, right?
Like, is your digestive tract ready? Are you showing signs in your body that you're already infested with overgrowth of yeasts or fungus that are also disturbing nutrient absorption? Are you having gastronomical issues? Are you in pain? Are you even able to go to the bathroom? Are you defecating a couple of times a day, or at least once a day? Or is it taking you 2 to 3 days for that to get? How toxic are you, right? Because a lot of times it's a cellular toxicity load that's really keeping people held back. It's not always about the food. And I think we get so focused, like you said, on the foods, right, that we forget that we have, the human biome that we have to worry about to get in balance as well. And food plays a part in that, right? So meat, I think meat is being beaten.
It's been demonized.
Oh my
so
gosh.
Much.
It's, I find it very strange how overnight someone can be like, yeah, I'm having a 16-ounce T-bone steak and it's awesome. And then tomorrow they're like, I will never eat meat again. And, because this has got me, not so healthy, but maybe you just ate too much. I'll give you an example.
Or maybe you didn't eat the best quality meat, and so you're eating and it's too fatty and it's processed, and the animal is fed corn or grains or some other toxic thing that you're then ingesting, as opposed to, like you were saying, with Joel Salatin, it's grass-fed, it's clean. There are people that are actually paying attention to their food.
Yeah, they're not doping their animals, right? So, we are what we eat. So if the animal gets doped, you get doped. If you eat genetically modified foods, you get genetically modified, right? So we have a lot of GMO people walking around right now who've been genetically modified and are having all types of dysfunction and disruption in the body. But meat has just been overly bashed, in my opinion. Where we really need to get down to is sustainably raised food, right? Sustainably raised meats that aren't denatured, right? That's why you're not going to get this on a large scale. Don't expect it. It's not out there. So if you're expecting to go to Costco and get like the most awesome grass-fed meats, you're not going to get it. It's not scalable at this point. What's scalable is working with smaller farmers. At this point,
I think that it can be costly.
Yes.
And the fact is, I always tell people that there's two things that you need in order to be able to get healthy: time and money.
Absolutely.
And you have to be willing to invest some into your food source. And if you're not doing that, and you're just kind of doing the bare minimum, or you're just buying the cheapest thing on the shelf, it's very, very hard to achieve your goals.
Yeah, you're not going to get there. You're not going to get there cheaping out. You can actually get there being economical, right? Making stronger decisions. I couldn't afford Joe Salatin's meats when I got into it, but I bought in bulk, so I could afford it. When I was able to see I could get the price per pound down to like $5.25, I was crushing what I was paying in the grocery store anyway. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm getting clean meat. There's no drugs in this stuff. It's fresh. It's local, so it hasn't traveled all over the universe to get to me, right? I'm winning, actually. I made a $150 investment into a deep freezer. That was the cost. So I recouped that cost within, a whopping 2 orders. I recouped that cost. So within the time frame that we got started with Joel Salatin, sourcing that food locally, and you could do the same thing with any other farmer. They would love to sell you a bulk load of meat at a time, and to set up a schedule with them. They're like, okay, we expect to see you back, once a quarter, every 6 months. This allows that local farmer to run a more sustainable operation, and you're paying someone who's going to be happy that you're doing business with them. You're going to see the instant impact locally, and your dollar stays local. It just helps everyone in the cycle, as well as yourself. So we made those sacrifices, and they weren't that difficult to do. Next move was, how do we do this and bring the money down even more? You go find a buddy, right? You go find a family member who also is understanding that where they're at with their health is not working out, and they need to source some things locally, and you're bringing them into the fold. So now I can get half of a cow at this point. Drive my price point down even further, right? You're paying like $4 a pound at this point. Tell me where you're going to go find a filet mignon for $4 a pound in your grocery store. You're not. You're not going to. So there's ways to get the budget aligned. But, even in that token, Brad, most countries spend upwards of 15 to 20% of their income on food, except the United States. Most people in the United States, I believe the study said, they spend 10% or less on food, which means they spend 10% or less on their real health, but they're probably paying 20 or 30% into the healthcare system. Right? So I don't pay into the healthcare system. I pay into my health instead.
I believe that we either going to pay for it now, or we're going to pay for it later.
Yeah.
And so are there investment of time and energy and focus and paying attention if your joints ache, if you're getting headaches, you're short of breath, all these different things have solutions to them. And so part of the reason why I wanted to have Ken on the podcast here is because one of the things that I think is really essential to be able to achieve better health is to have the motivation to be able to do what it is that you want to do. You have to have the knowledge, you have to have the understanding of what it is that you need to do, but then you have to be able to execute. And a lot of times people get stuck because either they get stuck in what do they say, analysis paralysis, or they lose their steam. And so to have some sort of accountability to what it is that you're doing, that's part of what Ken does. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But all of these things about food, and there's so many people out there that want to lose weight. They're inflamed around. You can just see it. You see people walking around. You think that it's a big belly. That's all inflammation.
Yeah.
And so you have to get that inflammation down. You got to get the body moving in the right direction, because you know what? We're not always going to be this age. We're going to get older. And as we get older, that weight is going to weigh down on our frame, and it's going to start breaking it down. And so you may not be able to see exactly what the problem is right now, but you know what? It's going to catch up to you, and I don't want that to happen to you. So if you're already on the path and you're already doing healthy things for yourself in your life, it's just really a matter of just fine-tuning it. Maybe you're doing half the things right. It's just really getting a little bit more specific. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and I also want you to talk a little bit about what is it that you're doing with your clients? What is it that you're hearing from them or that they need in order to be able to stick with their plans?
Oh, wow. You know, it does vary, but I would say at the core of everything, which is how I design my programs, I'll say it this way first, and then we'll kind of break that down. Every client needs a systematic approach with an individualized design. They need to understand there's a pathway of opportunity that's proven, but they need it to be catered to them. And that's where this is missing in much of medicine today, in that we're not willing to stand back, take in the whole person, the whole lifestyle impact, you know, how they're working, kids, how many, how were they raised? Were they breastfed? Looking at this holistic approach to everything about that person and understanding what they've done in the past. Like, what have you done? Like, to try to get to where you are now. I've done this, it didn't work. I've done that, it didn't work. Okay, let's talk about that a little more. People need help in us understanding them first. Like, spending some time with them, which is very hard to get in today's medical platform. Time, right? What are two things that we need? We need time and money.
Time and money,
right? So I give them the time. We investigate what has not worked, what has worked for them in the past, what got them off the rails, right? And having them reflect on that experience to be able to understand how to formulate a plan of opportunity to move forward. Something that they become part of, not just slap it on the table and go, here's the plan, you need to go, good luck. It needs to be their plan too, because the plan that they are part of, they can actually implement. They can hold themselves, so they can have some integrity within that process, because it is of them. It's not outside of them, it's of them.
It's not like you're imposing a plan on
Right.
them. You know, people do, it's even like, when they build a building, they have a plan first.
Yes.
And so in our lives, sometimes we fail to do the initial thinking necessary in order to be able to execute a good plan.
Yes. And I think, overall, what I see from my clients when they come back and say what they really like is, Ken didn't put me on diet X, Y, or Z, right? He listened to me. He got to understand my likes, my dislikes, my concerns, my failures, my triumphs, and put together a customized opportunity for me to succeed. That's the most important part. People need success. And so, in my pathway that I work with clients, it's a 10-day cycle. So you can do anything for 10 days, is what I like to say. We can get anything done for 10 days. So we move in 10-day cycles. In my platinum program, we connect every week. So we're literally getting biofeedback every week in that consultation that we hold, so that we can understand, all right, we're 3/4 of the way through this 10-day cycle. How's it been? What are our wins? What are our failures? What are our measurements right now? So we're constantly tracking and evaluating the individual holistically. How is your attitude? How is your energy levels doing? All of these are biofeedback for us to understand how we're moving forward based on whatever elements they're trying to correct. And so without them being able to have someone reflect on that with them, it's hard to keep your motivation up. But if I'm there and I'm saying, oh, you've got this happening right now, oh, that's a great indicator of X, Y, and Z. Oh, you've done this, oh, that's good. oh, you didn't lose any weight this week, but you dropped an inch around the waistline. That's excellent, right? That's a big win. Depending on the individual, they may not understand where their wins are. So I'm also I'm not there just, I'm not the type of health coach and consultant that's there to beat you down, right? I'm there to hold you accountable, right? Help you maintain your integrity, and then also show you where your victories are so that we can keep winning together. And that's ultimately where I think, the type of service that I provide and others provide in this arena brings the most value, and why it's becoming more popular for people to pick up a health coach or a consultant to work with, because they can't get it done by themselves. This is a little complicated, this thing called body, diet, and getting all this lifestyle factors built in together. Someone needs to be able to do a 30,000 foot view on this, and also drill down at the right times to focus on things that need manipulation, and to help them move through systems, processes, tool sets that will work for them specifically, right? So some people might say, oh, I worked with health coach X who gave me the shake, right? And then they disappeared after they gave me the shake. It's not a health coach, all right? That's not a health consultant. That's a distributor. We should call a spade a spade. Then there's someone who could succeed with that, though. Maybe that was the catalyst. All they needed was that shake that helped them kind of piece pieces together. Maybe it led them down an opportunity to investigate and then educate themselves more. But I wouldn't say that's the average person, okay? The average person needs the resources, someone to go, here are resources to read. Like that guy gave me a reference to kind of, and that changed my life. That book got me to read more books. I don't know how many books I've read on this stuff at this point because of that one offering, right? Just shifted my mind a bit to go, oh, people need to study this. Yeah. And so all my clients need to study, right? There's an education phase. You need to get educated. Then there's a preparation phase. And then there's an application phase. This is all very important for us to understand that there's a systematic approach to success. That's what everybody, they just want to succeed. They just want to win, right? They just want to win at this thing. People stop because they're sick of failing, at the end of the day. So as long as we're building an approach, individualized to that person, constant testing and measurement along the way, validation is really critical. Are we validating the things that we're doing? Are we just moving through some minutia of things and not really seeing what the results that we need to see? And then be willing to also, part of my responsibility is to refer them out when certain things pop up that are more severe than nutrition can compromise for, or consultation can compromise for. They may have another medical condition that is popping up that they may not have known they had. Now, this is an awesome opportunity to find another beneficial practitioner and to leverage them in this process, and to I consider myself kind of a hub spoke mentality. That's why I work with chiropractors, naturopaths, Reikis, and you name it. All these different opportunities we have in natural wellness. Different clients need different things. Some of my clients, most of my clients are actually business owners and senior executives. So mindset, kind of a big deal with those types of folks, right? High energy, high performance. How do we get that in our life? How do we maintain our discipline to move things forward for ourselves and take it very seriously and navigate certain lifestyle factors? Sales executives, for example, I build a lot of the protocols and things that I preach from the standpoint of being a traveling senior sales executive while I was healing my body. So when I shut my business down in the financial space, I went to work in the sales for IT. And so I did that for about 7 years. And that's where I continued to better myself, was on I would consider it like the most austere environment, is to try to correct your health while you're going to travel. It's not exactly easy to navigate the wild.
Sure.
Because you're out of your safe zone. You don't have all your perfect foods and vegetables at home. You've got to go navigate your choices in the wild. Right. And then you've got to make compensating factors with some types of supplementation sometimes to deal with that. Well, how do you feel about?
I think that people oftentimes think that they can do this themselves.
Oh yeah.
And I would tell you from myself, there's a lot. I've learned a lot. I've been on this path now for for over 30 years.
Yes.
And so I understand my own body, I understand, from an exercise or a food standpoint or a sleep or, how to manage my stress level. And so incorporating a team of people, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, it doesn't have to break the bank. I have chiropractic patients that come in once a week, every other week, once a month, once a quarter, twice a year. I don't really recommend twice a year, but I think that we meet our challenge where it is that we can actually engage. And I remember hearing somebody recently, they were talking about, where's the kind of lowest barrier of entry?
Mm-hmm.
How can we get people involved? And so for Ken here, where it's like, wow, a book changed his life. The $10 book, it changed his life. It doesn't have to be $100 or $1,000.
No.
My, a friend of ours was hospitalized and for 3 days, and he had an $8,000 bill. How healthy did that make them? Not very much. So, we have to get smarter in our lives to be able to strategically be able to get really clear about what it is that we're trying to accomplish and get the support around us so that we can actually do that. So if somebody talk a little bit about your process with people. Like, somebody calls you and they say, I'm really interested in doing this. And I would also say that not all health coaches are the same. Just like not all dentists are the same, not all doctors are the same, not all chiropractors are the same. You ever had a bad haircut? I'm sure you have. Sometimes not all hairstylists are the same. So when you're trying to find somebody who's a professional, they really know what they're doing, and sometimes you get what you pay for. Again, I don't know anything about how much it costs to do things with Ken here, but I tell you that the investment in yourself, just like investing in food, investing in knowledge, is really, really key to this process.
Yeah. That first phone call that I take is...
Are they scared?
Yeah, they should be. I think you should be when you call, like, hey, you're calling me for... Most of my business is word of mouth. So it's like when people call me, they're like, okay, so you're the get it done guy. I'm like, yeah, I specialize in lifestyle change. I don't specialize in dropping 5 to 10 pounds for an event. I could help you with that, but that's not my focus. My focus on, let's go do the work. Like, let's get it done. Let's lock this down and change your life for life, and change your family's life and your friend's life, because you're going to be a beacon of health as we move through this process. They're going to be watching you. They're going to learn from you, and you're going to be able to teach them some things. So my ultimate goal when they get on that first phone call is like, do you want to become independently healthy? Is that something you want?
I love that.
Because that's what I provide. I provide the path to allow you to have the tools, the resources, knowledge, and fortitude to become independently healthy. You're going to own it after we're done, after we get through this process. And some people can't take that. They're not ready for that. That's not my client. My client is the person who's had enough of the BS. They've had enough of the keto, the paleo, the vegan, the whatever the hot new diet is that they're going to try and manipulate and fail at, to truly figure out health for themselves and how to find balance within themselves to achieve the goals that they have within their health and their life. That's what that first meeting is all about. And so moving from there into, yes, I want to do this. Okay, we can properly align. You're ready to be coached. You're ready to be consulted. Great. Some clients come to me and they're not ready for coaching. And so I will consult with them if they're looking for a consultant to maybe help them build a plan, to do the proper analysis, to still get them a plan of execution. Good. Maybe not ready for coaching yet. That's not a problem. We can still help, right? And some don't need coaching. They're highly motivated. They're doing the work. They just need the pieces put together a little better. Like, can you help me with this puzzle? Like, yeah, I love puzzles. Let's put the puzzle together. Boom, puzzle solved. Now you're good to go. But I would say on the average client, like, my process starts with a detailed analysis. There's two major ones. There's a holistic lifestyle nutrition assessment that I do. It's a pretty long document. It's probably about 10 pages long. And then there's a biochemical analysis that I do on my clients as well. And this allows me to truly understand comprehensively about their nutrition deficiencies and where they lie. Now, that's not a type of blood test. This is a 600 question document that they work through systematically that identify certain deficiencies, whether it be fats, amino acids, minerals, vitamins, and all that good stuff, all the technical details, and leads me down a path to be able to marry both this technical assessment and this lifestyle assessment, melt them together. That's the data on paper. Then we sit down for an hour and a half. And then we go through this, and then we dig deeper and find out where are the addictions coming from? Is there any emotional stress eating going on? Where is that rooted from? Things that we're going to have to work on. They also do a goal assessment, and the goal assessment is a year long, right? It doesn't mean they're going to work with me for a year. Most of my clients typically work with me for 90 days to 6 months. However, some may come back and they may retain me just for like, hey, I like to check in with you once or twice a month as I'm still working through some lifestyle things to get things dialed in, and that's totally fine too. But that 3 to 6 month opportunity is very focused on nailing those goals. I'm a big advocate of crushing goals. So when we do the goal worksheet, I get so excited because I partner with every one of my clients, and I love winning, right? So I'm like, if you want to work with a winner, you're in the right place, because when you fail, I fail, and I don't really like to fail. Like, I don't. And so, like, if you're telling me, like, yeah, this weekend I kind of let my guard down, and, I had 4 glasses of wine. I'm like, well, why are you having wine, John? We're not doing wine right now.
Right.
Wine is not on our list, right? And it just...
But you're no fun.
Yeah, I'm fun. I'm fun at victory, right? There's fun in the victory, and there's fun in the achievement. And ultimately, when we're moving through behavior shift, we have to correlate fun, like positive versus negative disposition. Like, why are you on this path of doing something that's destroying you that you find fun, right? Or positive, when there's this other disposition of path that we need to move to that you perceive as lacking. It's not so much fun. That doesn't look good to do. It looks hard. It's pain associated with it. But the ultimate objective of my job is to shift that to where you're choosing more of that other pattern, because you can see and feel the fun and the good out of making that life change, because your relationships got better. You're performing better at work. Your numbers are getting better. You're having more energy to hang out with your kids at the end of the day and not just become a blob on the couch when you get in from work that day, right? You're not having those bad linens in the bathroom anymore, and so on and so forth. It's about shifting that perspective to understand there's a lot of great opportunity in this, what you perceive as pain today, that will become ultimately your present principle. And you can still visit those other things, right? And I think that's ultimately where, as we grow older, most of my clients are typically between 38 and up, right? So they've kind of been there, done it, worked hard, they've gotten to a certain level of disposition in their careers or in their businesses, or they're starting something new. Maybe second phase of life that they're getting to at this time. So they need all their resources. They need to fire on all cylinders. And I love to ask my clients, when's the last time you felt your body fire on all cylinders? Like, you get up hungry to meet the day. You get your workouts in. You're stellar at work. You have focus. You don't have brain fog. Your vocabulary is coming back, right? Like, you can find words again. You're not stumbling over everything that you say. And all of those are indicators of our health degrading over time. And so, we move through that. We talk about movement. We talk about and explore spirituality, within ourselves. How do we root to what we're doing to our existence, being, and purpose? Because a lot of times people are doing something because they saw someone else do it. Well, that doesn't hold you into a lifestyle very long, because you don't get to hang out with that person, right? That's not the 5 people that influence you the most. Oh, and you may lose some friends in this process.
Yes.
You will lose some friends. They will disown you a bit. You will not get the phone call. You will not get the invites to certain things, but you may make some new friends, right?
I had a patient yesterday tell me, she said she has friends that are saying, when are you going to start eating this stuff again? And she kind of laughed. I'm like, it's amazing. It's like, because it's like, and again, sometimes you really have to change your friend group, because not everybody is going to understand that you're holding yourself to this higher standard, and that, you know what, that's what's important. And I'm actually at the point where I'm getting pleasure from what it is that I'm doing.
Yes, that is great. It's actually one of the questions that it was the first time this year. I have a client I work with right now. She's Italian, and so she had a lot of typical Italian eating problems. American Italian, not Italy Italian, American Italian. So we've worked through a lot of those things. And one day she asked me something very similar. It just cracked me up. She was like, okay, so when do I go eat normal again? And I'm like, you're doing it. Like, like, you are eating normal right now. Look at everything that's working for you. You've dropped like 40 pounds in less than 3 months. Your inflammation's gone. You're thinking better. You're doing all this great stuff. You've dropped like 5 dress sizes. Like, give me a break. Like, you want to go back?
Right.
Why would you go back?
Right.
Just give me some good reasons.
So what did she say to that?
She didn't have any good reasons.
Right.
I'm like, well, why would you go back? Give me some great reasons of opportunity as why you want to do that. Right. And so the first one was because, well, I love being social. I'm like, you know, there's all types of, I said, most people don't like being social. They like stuffing their mouth full of stuff to keep from being social. Social is about interacting with people. It's not just about eating and drinking. That's just something we've made up along the way, and it's become the center point of socializing. Socializing is just eating and sitting now.
Right.
When I was coming up, and we were talking about this, me and my wife, about Thanksgiving. You know, what are we going to do for Thanksgiving this year? And the first thing that we decided was, well, we're going to have everybody over, and we're going to have games. We're going to start with gaming in the beginning. So come over early. We're going to do lots of games so we can actually socialize and actually interact with each other and have some fun, right? And we're not doing that enough in America anymore. Everything is all centered around bringing the food and just eating and then watching television. It's horrible.
Right.
Like, our nation was not that way, and that's kind of how we are now. And we need to become a more active nation, a thinking nation, a nation that cares about each other and wants to learn about each other, and not just go, hey, haven't seen you in a year. Let's sit down and eat this animal.
Yeah.
You know, and have some vegetables, and when we get into dessert and coffee, and we're out.
Right.
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 So it was funny going over that with her, because she clearly got to see, as we had the conversation, she wasn't being social. She was literally going there to drink. That kind of came out for her. She was like, I didn't realize I just like to go there to drink. I was like, so you go there to escape. You didn't actually go there to socialize at all. Isn't that a little different? So just kind of picking up on those pieces of the puzzle. You know, everybody has their thing, right? Nobody, I have a saying in my practice, which is, nobody gets out of this thing unscathed. We're going to bump some knees. We're going to scrape some elbows. You might get a knock on your head, all right? No one walks into this not addicted to something. You're here because something is pulling you a certain way that you don't have any control over. And it could be alcohol, it could be caffeine, it could be sugars and toxins and chemicals and foods you don't even know exist. That are pulling you a certain
sleeping
way.
only 4 hours a night and burning the candle at both ends.
Absolutely. You know, pushing yourself, the A-type personality.
I did that.
Yes.
I did that for years.
Yes.
I did that.
That was a big part of my problem too. I still have to watch. I still have to check myself for that. I like to do a lot. It doesn't mean I should. I just like to. And so I have to be careful with my time and make sure that I'm getting my proper rest as well. Because it's one of the things that I'll chalk it up. You know, I'll burn the midnight oil tonight, but you can only do that so much before it catches up with you. It's not the way to really roll.
There was I was listening to an interview with Ariana Huffington from Huffington Post, and she read a book called Thrive, because she was working these crazy hours, sleeping only a couple hours a night, and she literally collapsed and hit her head on a glass table. And
Whoa.
I think she shattered her nose or her face or something like that. The fact is, you know, we have to balance our lives, and we think that we can go nonstop. And I did that for many, many years. I was on 3-4 hours a night, and I was actually functioning really, really high, so I thought I was okay. And then I started sleeping more, and I realized what I was missing.
Yeah.
It's a game changer.
It is a game changer.
It's a game changer.
I love working on sleep. I remember one of my first skinny clients, totally skinny. He's like 6'1", 140 pounds. So he came to me to gain muscle. He was like, I want to gain some weight. I'm 45. I've never been able to do it. Haven't figured it out. Can't gain weight because he didn't sleep. There's no rest. There's no repair, right? So all the great things you do during the day, you eat the right things, you do the right workouts, you don't sleep, you don't get it. You don't get the benefits from it, or a very small portion of it, because there's so many biochemical rhythms that have to happen that are dependent on that rest and repair at night. So you may stimulate all that action during the day and get the proper hormonal responses kicking up and moving forward, and then you shut them down because you don't get the right kind of rest at night. You don't get restorative rest, restorative sleep or deep REM sleep at night. So you toast it. He, for example, was able to get sleep after he removed every stimulant. He wasn't sleeping because he was a smoker and a caffeine drinker, and he had poor food choices. Mm-hmm. He called me back. I remember this like it was so funny. He called me back and was like, I have slept 11 hours. He's never slept 11 hours in his life. He goes, and I have done that for 2 days in a row, and I don't even know who I am. He didn't even know who he was. Like, I am in a whole new place. He went from sleeping 2 to 3 hours a night to 11 hours. That's how bad his body needed rest. That's how bad his cellular function was just disrupted. And he goes, I kind of pull myself out of a bit of a cloud right now, but I feel much better. I'm like, I bet you do. I bet you do feel much better.
It's amazing.
Sleep is our gift, man. Sleep is a gift.
It's so underrated in our society. And you know what? If you just decide, and a lot of times what I'll tell people to do is do it for a week. Mm-hmm. Do it for 30 days. People have trouble giving up their vice.
Yes.
So set some short-term goals for yourself. And again, maybe you're not ready yet to engage this beast over here, but but listen, I think that part of the purpose for this podcast is to bring the truth to you. Because the fact is, everything that I'm teaching you, all these podcasts that we're doing, is really about laying the foundation for the principles, the practice, the mindset, and the discipline that you need in order to be able to achieve your goals. Because nobody's going to do it for you.
Oh, no.
You have to do it, but you don't have to do it alone. And so people like Ken, people like myself, I hire coaches all the time. I go and take classes, and I get advice from people who know more than I do. And so this has been really amazing. I hope you found this incredibly helpful. I think that everybody should be hiring people in order to be able to help them in their lives. It doesn't have to cost a lot, but setting some small goals, and maybe in 2019, not that you need to start in January 1st. In fact, I would tell you to start today. Whatever today is the day that you need to start. And so finding people that can actually help you in your lives. And if Ken is somebody that resonates with you and you think that he may be able to really help you, he has a whole team of people that can help you. So I think this is amazing. And when we really get down to it, we have a goal, we have a mindset, we think we want something, and we go get it. That's it. It's not any more complicated than that. But sometimes we talk ourselves out of the very thing that we want. Oh, it's going to be too hard. It's too expensive. Nobody's, the people around me are not going to accept me for that. I may need to change my friends. Change is hard sometimes. But you know what? You can do this. You can do this. And over the course of your career, Ken, with your clients, tell me a couple of just really dramatic cases of people of transformation.
Oh, transformation is a big deal. One of my favorite ones is to see people come off of medications, right? Dropping 6 to 7 medications is one particular case. They had every chemical cocktail that's known in the world right now, multiple gut medications, anxiety and depression medications, diabetic medications, all that stuff being delivered, and they come off all of them. That's a beautiful thing. That's huge. That's impactful. Recent case of a diabetic who A1C levels were in the 8s. We're down to the normal within 60 days. Off of meds, done. Changed his life. He's been dealing with that forever. Person was dealing with anxiety and depression medication for 22 years. Off, done. Not using those anymore after 90 days of working with us. It's just about getting the right support. People need to feel supported. Nutrition plays a part in that. Also, relationship plays a part in that, and understanding that you can actually do this and you have a hand to kind of guide you through the fire. weight is always coming off at Newbill Health, so that's just a normal thing. I don't really focus on weight management more so than I focus on getting the body healthy and the human mindset appropriate to release weight. You will naturally release it when you do the right things. If you start off like I did and went to go lose the weight, you lose a little bit of weight, get a lot of other stuff you don't want because you're too focused on that. Get focused on fixing your body, fix the health that you have, and weight will take care of itself. Just making the better choices.
Beautiful. Well, maybe if you can leave us with a parting thought, something. What's a piece of wisdom or something that has really helped you in your own life that keeps you going, that keeps you focused on what it is that you're trying to do for yourself, for your family, for your friends, and for your clients?
The best thing that I could leave is we all have a responsibility as humans to help another human. If the actions that you take for yourself are so impactful that other people pay attention to it, they may be able to attach themselves to it. So we owe a responsibility when we decide to make a change in our lives that's positive, to be a beacon for others, to shine our light onto others. I'm not changing what I do. I'm always striving to become better in my health and in my life, because I understand that people are watching me and they're depending on me to remain consistent where they may not be, so that they have an opportunity of example to attach themselves to and to understand Ken's just a human. He's made a lot of mistakes, he's done a lot of good, and I'm going to be here to help others to do the same. And every one of us has that responsibility. You don't have to become a professional health coach, but I believe each one of us that goes through a shift in our health should be coaching others in some way, shape, or form. So take that responsibility, put it on your shoulders. It'll help you stay true.
Beautiful. I'm Dr. Brad Wolf. This is Living Max Health, where we're transforming world health before your eyes. It's time to get into action. We're going into a new year here shortly. Take it upon yourself to raise your level, to raise your standard, and up your game. We're here to help you. Stay tuned, get engaged in the conversation. We're so happy that you watched. Thank you so much.